Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michaela Pochner, and I'm an associate editor at Precision Farming Dealer. Thank you for joining us today for a digital demo of Verge Ag's Launchpad software. Today's presenters are Nick Morrow, SVP of Product, and Chad Matthews, VP of Enterprise Operations. Nick and Chad are going to discuss Launchpad and the features that make it a powerful sales enablement tool for dealerships. Before they get started with the presentation, I have a couple of housekeeping items. On your screen, there is a control panel with a Q&A icon. This is where you can submit questions at any time during the presentation. There will be a couple of spots during the presentation that will stop for questions, and then at the end, we'll make time for Q&A as well. If you'd like to ask Nick and Chad a question yourself, please use the raise hand feature, and I'll unmute you and call on you when they start taking questions. Also, we are recording today's session in the event that you want to go back and watch or share it with anyone else on your team. And with that, I'll hand it over to Nick and Chad.
Excellent. Thanks, Michaela. Appreciate the introduction, and it's our pleasure to be here today with yourself and with all of the attendees on today's call. And we do thank everyone that took the time out of their schedules today to chime in and join us for our session here today. Much appreciated. So, as Michaela said, my name is Chad Matthews. I'm with Verge Ag. I am based out of Winnipeg, Manitoba area in Canada. Along with me, there's going to be a few other people from the organization, from Verge, with me here today. But just for the sake of time, I'm only going to introduce a few of them. So, accompanying me here today is a colleague of mine, Nick Morrow. Nick and I today will be the faces you see and the voices you hear from Verge talking on Launchpad. In addition to that, I will call out one other employee who's new with Verge that's based out of Alabama in the US. His name is Clint Casey. And Clint is our US channel manager. So someone that, I'm not sure who's on this call here today. Maybe you're familiar with the name. If not, please become familiar with Clint, as he will be working with Verge in the US to help us develop our channel. So without further ado, I'm going to dive into this, but just one last housekeeping item. I know Michaela did touch on this, but we don't want to discourage interaction, and we definitely don't want to discourage questions and comments, and we sure don't want to discourage compliments. So at any point in time throughout this presentation, please just use the chat feature. Plug in a question, comment, definitely a compliment, you have them, and we'll make sure they're monitored and they're addressed throughout the presentation. In addition to that, this will be broken apart into 2 sessions. And I will pause after the second session to address any questions for those of you that have any at that time as well. Just kindly unmute yourself and feel free to fire away at that time. So without further ado, I'm gonna dive into this because I think we've only got about 50 minutes left, which shouldn't be an issue, but don't want to waste too much time. So today we're going to talk about Launchpad, our product from Verge, and it's the only interactive sales enablement tool ever made for equipment dealers. Pretty bold statement, so we're gonna be backing that up over the next little while. Before we talk on Launchpad, I want to give you guys a little bit of overview in terms of Verge and our organization, our company. So we are a global company with operations in Canada, the US, and Brazil. So we have 24 full-time team members and a very fast, rapidly growing team. That number will be substantially higher in the upcoming months. We currently serve 8 countries in terms of countries where we have paying customers. We were founded in 2019 and just recently procured our Series A financing round in late 2021, which we're really excited about. Looking at proven product market fit. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about trial boundaries and farm orgs. I really want to take you to that kind of the far right-hand side of this slide and show you that while we are a small organization and we're fairly new in this space, we do have a really solid foundation of paid acres and paid customers at north of 650,000 paid acres here today, from customers, farming customers that believe in the value and receive value from what we do with our solution. We're really proud of that number, and it's rapidly growing as well. Moving on, I want to touch a little bit on terms of who we work with in terms of our customer base and our target customers. So as I alluded to before in the previous slide, those 650,000 acres, those are predominantly coming from farming operations. So farmers that see value in Launchpad and utilize Launchpad to help plan their operations for execution in season. In addition to that, we also work with precision ag companies and contract operators. But here today, we're addressing equipment dealers, and the majority of what I'm going to talk to you today is going to be Launchpad, our two solutions from Launchpad in terms of Equipment Explorer and Equipment Enhancer, and how these solutions are valuable to you as equipment dealers with your unique business, right? And most importantly, we're also looking for channel partners in every geography. So we're a growing company. We believe we've got a tremendous future, and we want to work with local channel in every geography. When I say local, we're looking at 3 L's. We're looking at local knowledge, local relationships, and local investment. So, please keep that in mind as you go through the presentation, and we'll definitely touch on that in the very last slide before we adjourn for the day. So I want to talk on disruptive innovation in the areas of precision and autonomous agriculture. And before I go any further on this slide, let me just be really clear. When I say disruptive innovation, I'm not saying that in a negative way. I think innovation is key to success, short and long term. When you have disruptive innovation, now you're really making change. And if you can make change for the better, you're doing some really good things. So I believe disruptive innovation is a true positive. But with positives comes challenges, right? There's gaps and areas of improvement. And we believe we look at the autonomous gap, right? So the future of autonomous agriculture. Now there is a gap, an autonomous gap. And it's predominantly coming from that foreign knowledge from in-field experience. Those farmers that know their land like the back of their hand, have operated machinery, executing operations in fields for, in some cases, decades. Transferring that knowledge from farmers to the autonomous operation. In addition, land, soil, and equipment characterization, and then the ability to pre-plan precise paths for equipment. Not planning at the edge of the field or while you're in the middle of an operation, but planning it weeks, months in advance. We look at that gap and how we can close it. So, the pre-plan operations, task equipment, execute operations, and then most importantly, go back, compare, and improve those operations for the future. And at the end of the day, what we're trying to accomplish with our solution and our technology is we want to empower farmers to make decisions when they are not in close proximity to their fields. We want to reduce that in-field decision-making that takes place with seeding a field, with tilling a field, spraying a field, spreading manure or fertilizer on a field, harvesting, whatever you're doing for an operation, we want to remove in-field decision-making. Now, what do I mean about reducing in-field decision-making? It's an interesting thing to say. Really, why is this valuable? It's a consistent path plan, right? And really, at the end of the day, it's not about just driving equipment to get done and execute an operation. It's about actually executing a field operation in the most efficient manner. It's about someone being in a field that may not have experience in that field and be able to transfer the knowledge from someone that does have experience in a field over to that other person. So that person can not just drive the equipment, but execute that field operation very similar to as if someone else was driving that machine. It's not just for autonomous agriculture. 100% of those 650,000 acres that are paid for and being used by Verge customers today are in manned equipment operations, okay? So what we're looking to do is reduce time taken to complete field operations, reduce the complexity of multi-machine synchronization, reduce the barriers of unfamiliar fields and complex boundaries, and then reduce human and operator error and fatigue. The path to autonomous farming starts with Launchpad. I'm going to transition into one of the products and one of the solutions that we're going to explore with you today. no pun intended, called Equipment Explorer. And really, at the end of the day, don't sell equipment without it. And our goal is to provide dealerships with cross-functional value and contribute to their hierarchy of revenue. Everyone has a unique hierarchy of revenue, and equipment dealerships, are definitely have their own. And we believe our solution, Equipment Explorer, very nicely dovetails and provides cross-functional value to your entire hierarchy of revenue. Whether that hierarchy of revenue being, more in the guidance, display, and section controls, precision ag services, or OEM web-based applications and services, whether it be to drive revenue from these components or utilizing these components to support and help retain that core revenue from sales, we believe we're going to be able to increase your engaged acres. So those acres where your customer sees value from what you bring to them, that is greater than the sale of a machine or an implement. It's that value that you bring in terms of your relationship, your service, your precision ag capabilities and output, your agronomic capabilities and output. Those parts that you're more engaged with their acres and you're stickier with your customer base, and they come back to you purchase over purchase year over year. And then most importantly is helping you drive your core and secondary revenue. And that really is helping you clearly decipher and articulate differences between one purchasing decision to another and the impact to their fields and their operation. So introducing Equipment Explorer. Now, it is the only interactive sales enablement tool ever made for equipment dealerships. And it really is unique. So when we look at what this tool does is it matches the size and functionality of equipment to the scope and complexity of a unique farming operation. And the ability to increase machine and implement sales. So you look at what this solution does very simply. It's spatially correlated. So it takes the width of a machine and or the implement that machine is pulling, such as a seeder or a planter, and it spatially correlates that to the unique field and all the complexity that come in these fields today. Now this screenshot you're seeing right now is somewhere in Saskatchewan. It looks like Swiss cheese, some of these fields, because there's a lot of trees and sloughs and so on in the fields. Very unique. Every field is different. Every field is complex in its own way, and we truly marry and match equipment to a field to help you understand the difference between, say, a 132-foot wide sprayer to a 120-foot sprayer, just as one real simple example, or new combine technology or header technology that you can travel faster. Maybe it's the same width, it's a 40-foot wide header, but instead of going 3.5 or 4 miles per hour, maybe you can go 4.5 miles per hour, right? Increase that speed and really show that difference across a farming operation. In addition to that, it's the difference between going from such guidance technology as RTK up to RTK from, say, WAS, where you've got a 2.5 foot difference in accuracy, and how that impacts the amount of travel, fuel, and so on that you will have to execute an operation on a field. And then in the not too distant future, what are the impacts to that across your entire farming operation? And always, and most important is, that engaged acre, right? Keeping you guys closer to your customer and providing, maximum value from what you do, engaging and working with your customer base. So I'm going to pivot here really quickly into a live demo. Before I do that, I did want to touch briefly on an integration we have with John Deere in their operations center, where if you're a John Deere operations center account holder and you have your grower farm field and field boundaries set up in operations center, you can sync all of that to Launchpad. You can execute path planning in Launchpad, and then you can export things, all those plans, back to operations center in a single sign-on fashion. So a real nice, simple, clean, and seamless integration with operations center. So next, I'm going to switch gears here, and I'm going to toggle into a brief live demonstration showcasing some of the features of Equipment Explorer. Okay, so I'm logged into Launchpad now, and I want to show you all some of the really unique features of what Equipment Explorer can bring to your operation and to your business. So this is our dashboard view, and I'm not going to spend too much time talking about path planning and all the intricacies and features of our system. We're going to get into that a little bit deeper into our presentation and demonstration today. I want to really focus it on areas of the system that are built and have value to equipment dealers, showcasing their equipment and their business interactively. So here I've got a series of fields set, and just for an example, I'm going to select on this field I've labeled RTK and create new path plan. We'll say we're going to do this for harvest, and we're going to have accuracy that's going to be, plus or minus 1 inch, right? So very, very good accuracy that you're going to see from RTK. I'm going to go create path plan. I've got 39.9 feet in width for a 40-foot header, knowing that my RTK accuracy is going to give me extremely close accuracy, less than 1 inch. I'm going to use 2 headland passes as well for this particular operation. I'll go select create path plan. So you can see here I've got a path plan that's been built now for RTK. So this is extremely accurate, a 40-foot wide header for a combine on a fairly large field. And it's showing me there's going to be about 132 tracks to execute this operation. I'm going to have a total track distance of about 133 miles, headland distance of 8 miles, and total distance of 142 miles. Okay. What's unique about this, if I click on my compare tab, this is where I can utilize any previously saved operation that I have for this field, which I can save for numerous types of equipment. We can do this comparison for upgrading from, say, a 30-foot wide header up to a 40-foot wide header, just for comparative example, which would show you 5 extra feet in width. You'd have substantially less tracks, right? And then you can articulate that to your customer basis, the options that they have, and show them the efficiencies created from going from one width to another. But for this example, I'm going to look at this fairly simply as you don't have RTK and you're moving up to RTK, and you're going to get some pretty substantial accuracy from going to RTK, which will mean less passes in your operations, which will mean less fuel and less time, which all contribute to much happier customers at the end of the day. So again, just want to showcase fairly simply how simple and intuitive this is for an equipment dealer to operate. This is 39.9 feet compared to 37.5 feet, where you're looking at the same combine, the same header, and essentially just looking at comparative differences on the guidance of that equipment. And you can see what this means in terms of time. So a 7% time saving. And you can look at calculating savings back onto that, understanding how does that time savings contribute to ROI, or difference in terms of, it might cost me a little bit more to upgrade to RTK, but I'm saving this much time, this much fuel, and so on. And you quickly see that cost to upgrade is overtaken by efficiency. And it's a truly nice way to articulate value to a customer. Now, if I go back to the main screen, I can show another example. Really simply, just if we're looking at a sprayer upgrade. Again, so here's we're looking at something that isn't necessarily going to be we're showcasing guidance, but maybe we're showcasing just moving up from a 120-foot sprayer to a 132-foot sprayer. I'll just use 1 headline pass for this, and hopefully it goes quicker than the last time.
So in just to add a little context here, what we're doing is we're actually taking a look at the field boundary. We're modeling in a headland pass, or however many headland passes they have. And building that kind of headland area, and then we're figuring out a bunch of different scenarios for each one of those tracks. So this is what Chad is showing now.
Excellent. So it's created by path plan. As you can see, without going into too much detail, we've got 28 tracks for this particular operation, for this particular field with this particular machine, okay? If I look at compare, how does that change versus the 120-foot sprayer, right? So you can see that it's only a 3 hour and 37 minute or so operation in total, but it's a 10% reduction in time. Okay, so a 10% reduction in time from 132 to 120 in this particular field, and that's spatially matched. And what can that look like across, entire farming operation, where that sprayer probably does 2 to possibly 3 or 4 applications per field per year as well, depending on what that grower is growing. And it doesn't take into consideration the concept of trampling as well, right? Less tracks in a field, depending on what you're growing. If you're in a row crop situation, that's, it's maybe not as applicable. But if you're in a sol-seeded situation, you're growing winter wheat or another crop where you're trampling, there's substantially less trampling and there's a lot less crop loss with that as well. So all different ways that you can showcase value of, why would you consider one machine versus another, right? In pure operation standpoint. I'll do one more example. And I'll show you as well what it looks like just for changing speed for a combine. So in this case, I'll use 2 headland passes as well on a 40-foot header, assuming it has RTK, so you're extremely accurate. You're not going to have a lot of overlap. And what I've done here is in the previously created plans that I have is I set them up so that I've done one operation at 3.5 miles an hour, which is previously saved. This operation is going to be done at 4 miles per hour. So it'll have a 0.5 mile per hour difference for this combine operation. And we'll show you the comparative difference between 0.5 mile on this one particular field. So again, if I look down below, I'm saving 15% of the time. I'm not saving anything in distance, right? Because it's a 40-foot header to a 40-foot header. I've just got upgraded technology, a newer combine, perhaps a newer, top of the line header with flex technology and so on, that allows me to operate a little bit quicker throughout a field. Okay, and this gives me substantial time differences, substantial savings, and showcases the value of one machine and one operation to another. Last but not least, I'm going to show one more piece of this, which I think you'll all find interesting. So if we look at overlap in a field, let's say we're on a seeding operation operating at 50 feet wide or so. And for those of you that have customers that farm in regular fields, fields that have a lot of curve, a lot of shape to them, depending on what they operate for section, row, nozzle controls, and so on, those irregular shaped fields contribute to a lot of overlap through an operation, which we want to showcase with our solution. So you can see in this operation here, you have 2 headland passes, okay? And Nick's going to talk about what our adaptive curves look like here in a bit. In addition to that, you've got your inner tracks, and the dotted line is a section control boundary. Okay, so if a customer isn't operating with section control, or maybe they only have section control and based on the complexity of their unique fields, it would be efficient for them to upgrade to, say, more nozzle row control, something that's a little more granular in that point. With this system, you're able to clearly show where overlap is taking place. You can potentially change a heading to reduce overlap if that individual doesn't have the ability to do it automatically through their equipment. or you can show them the value of why they should be upgrading to equipment or purchasing these sorts of controls on their machines. That'll be the last example I show today for the live demo. I'm going to convert back here to the presentation, and we'll keep moving forward. Okay. So last slide on Equipment Explorer. So Equipment Explorer, the only interactive sales enablement tool ever made. It truly is unique. It's spatially correlating each customer's unique land base to unique equipment. Okay. No fields are the same. They're all created a little bit differently, and we're able to spatially match. We can truly get granular and be very accurate on the difference between one to another, right? So analyze the operational impact of equipment width, working speed, guidance, and slope management on time, fuel, cost, and return on investment. Estimate savings, calculate ROI, and compare. The currently available features we have today are field level comparison. You can assess equipment fit and assess precision guidance. In the not too distant future, our teams are working on developing this out even further. So there'll be a consolidated farm view. So the ability to roll up multiple fields and multiple operations and compare across an entire farming operation as opposed to field. Overlap calculators, so you can assess the amount of overlap in terms of percentage and point rows, and then also assessing crop trampling. So with a little bit of more user definition in terms of, commodity value, perceived bushels and so on, we can easily calculate crop trampling as well and show that, and they'll show those differences. So really excited about this tool for equipment and dealers. We have numerous dealers across our current partner network that are getting value from this and see this as a tremendous part of their future in terms of how they articulate value and difference to their farmers. And the best part about it is it's very unique and it's interactive. It's like nothing else is available in the market today. I'm going to shift now into another product. Before I do it, I noticed there were some chats going, and we do have some participants on here that may or may not have questions or comments. So I will pause very briefly right now. If anyone has a question or comment they'd like to make on Equipment Explorer, please do, and we're happy to address that now. If not, we can always handle all questions and comments at the end. So I'll just pause for 1 second, and we'll go from there.
We have one question that asks, can you export the report?
Great question. And you cannot export a report today. No. You'll be able to screenshot the report, and you can export the path plans, and Nick will talk about that in a little bit. But we don't have an export feature for, let's say, as a PDF for any of the reports that are generated today. Thank you for the question. Any other questions or comments before I move on? Okay. I will keep going. If anyone else has a question or comment, look forward to addressing it at the end. In addition to Equipment Explorer, we have Equipment Enhancer, and I'd like to introduce Equipment Enhancer to you. This is the foundation of our business, and this is where our paying customers come from today, the ones that see the value in path planning. And for used equipment dealers, we look at this as, don't let your customers farm without it. You're selling next to land the most expensive and arguably the most valuable component of their entire farming operation. And we believe this is one missing piece to help them take that next step to increased efficiency and farming in a way that helps them be the best they can be at what they do. So simplify farm operations planning to reduce in-field decision-making and maximize the productivity of every machine across all operations. So what we get with this is exposing the results of random path selection and unsynchronized fleet. So you, as advisors to your customers selling equipment, in many cases, a farmer or an operator will enter a field. They will pick the longest straight edge of that field, and that's the heading they're going to take. That's the AB line they're going to select. That is not always the most optimal route to take in a field. So you can expose that and help your customers be better. Next, show your customers the most optimal path plans for their equipment on their fields. And I've got their underlined twice here, right? Because it's unique, it's spatial. So, expose what they're currently doing, show them how they can do something a little bit differently, and then show them the results they're going to get from making that change. Help your customers be more prepared for their field operations weeks and months in advance. This is a planning tool that can be utilized at any point in time prior to an operation. It's truly there for someone to pre-plan with and play with whenever they so desire and choose to do so. It does not need to be executed and operated in field at the time of operation. And last but not least, enable the full potential of your customers' guidance and control technology investments. Many customers that have made these investments, you're now able to enable the full value of that investment your customers made. And we'll talk about that in a slide. It's introducing complete track plan export. This is truly unique. Up until this past December of 2021, our customer base and our system operated off of AB guidance lines. That's what was created, and that was exported to a machine and then imported back into that machine for an execution of an operation. So you can see this is a GS4 controller. You've got in the pink, you've got a adaptive curve headland tracks. In the middle, we have complete inner tracks, and then the yellow dotted line is a section control boundary. So we have the ability to not just export AB guidance lines, we can also export the complete track plan for that machine and for that operation, including headland tracks, inner tracks, outer boundary, and inner boundary. Now, what's unique about this is it provides an opportunity for customers to maybe do things a little bit differently than they're used to doing, with little to no impact in terms of the time to execute an operation, but simply just changes where they start in a field versus where they normally would. Okay, so we're looking at the concept of seed bed disruption. And we were able to, with the help of some people on our team, model out a 4-wheel drive tractor, a 60-foot wide seeder with an air cart towed behind it. And using a real simple cookie cutter quarter section field, 155 acres, we modeled out every tire across the tractor, the seeder, and the cart, and showed where those tires impact across every turn. There's spatial impact across every turn. And we know that the field area impacted from that particular operation, that particular field, is 3 acres. Now, most farmers I know, not all, but most farmers I know, regardless of the technology they have available to them, will seed the headlands first. And when you seed the headlands first and you come back in and you seed your inner tracks and you turn over top of all those seed beds and you're disrupting those seed beds. What you get by not doing your headlands first, by doing your inner tracks first and your headlands last, is you get that decrease in seed and seedling mortality, decrease in uneven stands, and that will reduce your yield loss as well in those areas. So we're going to transition into the last demonstration of Launchpad here today, and hopefully it goes a lot smoother than mine. But I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Nick Morrow, and he's gonna grab the screen and give you guys a little more in-depth, granular look at path planning in Launchpad.
Thanks, Chad. So I wanted to just take everybody through just a little bit more of some in-depth parts of this, and then kind of wide spectrum of what Launchpad's doing. So first of all, we kind of start with a summary. Then we work on path planning, analyzing, and then finally taking action on those plans. So this is our summary dashboard. And the general idea here is to provide some value back to the user without any user input at all. So if you have field boundaries ready to go, potentially they're coming from John Deere. We're taking a look at those field boundaries and doing a little bit of analysis for that without any user input. So the first thing we're looking at is, what is the complexity of those boundaries? Because, the most ideal scenario, if we could avoid it, or if we could do it, was be a flat-ish ground, perfectly rectangular, probably infinitely long, right? Is the most efficient, but it's just not that way. Natural things happen within those fields. But everything that goes kind of beyond that rectangular shape is just more difficult. Either takes more technology, more time, more inputs. So we kind of help those users categorize those. In this example, I only have 5 fields, but imagine that you're a dealer and you're working with a newer grower with 100 fields. You can help to kind of categorize those things. So what's the general shape? Well, look at that. I have 2 of my 5 are really highly complex. Whereas only 1 of them are very rectangular. So if on 100 fields, I might be able to compare grower A and grower B with highly complex versus not complex. It depends on they're in the river bottom or they're out on the flat. Today we don't have that, but imagine if you had terrain in here. I want to start to compare and understand a grower that I'm working with. How many fields do they have where they have terrain challenges to look at? So this is really kind of a summarized view to help our dealer customers just generally understand what the grower has. And yeah, you might know a lot of it, but figuring out those outliers, like, oh, interesting, they typically have very, very large fields, but they have a couple of outliers. How can I talk with them, around those things? The other thing we just summarize it in general. So down here, we show how many fields they have, workable area. The total perimeter. It's kind of an interesting thing. What's the total perimeter of all of my fields? I have 18 miles in this case. This distance from central field is something we're experimenting with, but it will really come into effect when we are able to directly compare 2. So probably the most efficient scenario would be, a grower with 10 sections all tightly combined. And the worst case scenario is all of their fields on the furthest radius. They have to operate differently. They probably have to have more support vehicles, more labor, etc. Even though it's potentially the exact same land, the distribution makes it a completely different operation. And finally, we summarize their planning activities. So, our grower users today, they'll come in and they'll do some path planning, maybe on their on the simple fields or a certain area of their operation, and they'll come back. So we just need a way to really help them understand where are they at. So, how many do I have? Oh, I got to come back and I've got to do 3 more fields before my operation is planned. You can also filter by operation type. So we have a lot of users that are creating seeding and then burn down application kind of all at the same time. So just a neat little summary in kind of figuring out where they are so they can manage their time as seeding and as these different operations start. So that's really the summary aspect. And this is an area that we're working to build on, really. So we want to summarize as much as we can because, each little field we may find, a 5% benefit, but what you're really looking at is how can I help this grower on their entire operation? So wherever we can summarize information, we're looking to pull into this view. If I go into our path planning screen, and for the sake of time, I'm going to just write into an existing path plan. One of the things that we do is summarize everything by the field. So we do support multi-part fields. So that's really based on how the grower or the user wants to organize that. In this case, there's basically 2 dredge ditches and they consider it the same field. So we do support those multiple fields. So part 1, part 2, and part 3. We summarize everything at the top here. So the number of tracks, the total track distance, how much headland work they have and the total distance. That's for the entire field. But if we want to take a look at an individual part, such as part 1, we can go to part 1 and we can change those headings. So, various reasons you might want to change a heading. It's for efficiency. It could be for kind of an entire operation perspective where I want to seed 15 degrees off of the straightest edge so that I can harvest perfectly down that straightest edge. So we have controls to be able to do that, but you can also look here in these charts. So we actually have calculated every single heading kind of scenario. And so each one of these is basically a degree. So at 61 degrees, this is approximately the number of tracks that you have at 61. Kind of the worst case scenario is approximately 75 degrees. You'll have the most turns there. The minimum is near 0 and near 180 degrees. So straight up and down that track. So that's some of the things that we get into the details of for that. We also approximate total time and total distance, and we do compare each one of those across every single angle. So we present the user with scenarios to be able to evaluate how they want their operation to go. Where we suggest some things that we think are probably beneficial, but in the end, it's really on the grower and what kind of outcome they're trying to achieve. It's not always about time. Sometimes they do want to minimize time. Sometimes they want to minimize soil loss. Sometimes they want to plan out their seeding or their planting operation so that their harvest operation goes the smoothest, or potentially the application operation goes the smoothest because they run over that field 5 times. So it's really about what they want to achieve. So that's kind of what the solution is about. But we like to suggest things as we go along. So that's a quick rundown on the path planning. So this is by a single field, so you can really get into the details. We also do bulk planning too. So, we want to make sure that people can get done quickly. So we can hop over to our summary chart again, and we can just say, hey, I want to select all of my fields and I want to create path planning for every single one of them. Just go right at it, 100, 200 or whatever. And then be able to review those and maybe pick out a couple that you want to improve or tweak or ask questions on. Let me see here. So let's talk just a little bit about compare, just a little bit more. So I have 3 different parts here. And I want to compare. So this might be that example where I'm looking at changing my management practice, where I want to plant at an angle so that I can harvest straight. And I used to I used to plant off the longest edge. Now I want to do this to make my harvest go better because I want everything I can do to keep those harvesters running and those brake cart running. I want that to go as efficient as possible. So quick comparison then, so approximately 12 hours on the straight version and approximately 12 and a half. So not a terrible amount of difference in this case. It happens to be a relatively rectangular field in much of the cases. We do have a little calculator in here as well. So it's a way for, I think this is a great way for just to have conversations between a grower and an advisor, equipment advisor, et cetera. So for these particular plans, you can compare equipment or costs between each one of those plans, or you can also compare different equipment on the same plan. So 2 examples might be, leased versus owned scenarios, or a technology that requires less labor or less fuel. And then the other version could be 2 different pieces of equipment, whether it's equipment widths or high-speed planning technology, to really kind of understand, this is 4.3 miles an hour, and this is cranking it up to 10, let's just say 8 miles an hour on some of the high-speed planting. And instead of, making general statements, you can do site-specific kind of analysis around that. So a lot of times there's an objection. That doesn't work on my fields. Well, let's talk about it. Let's work on it on your fields, and let's do the comparison on your fields. So it's a little bit about comparison. Talk just a little bit about elevation. So this is an area that we're starting to get into, bringing in digital elevation models and helping growers look at the slope in which their equipment needs to climb and descend, and as well as starting to take a look at water flow. So what you see here with these colored lines is that we've categorized the slope that the equipment is having to take at a particular angle. So at this particular angle of 141 degrees, there is 15% of this field has greater than 8% slope, so pretty big climb. We can then adjust that angle, etc., and see how that changes. So it's, now that's a 16-degree slope. Another thing we can do here is let's really dig into what we're looking at. So let's say I really care about the flat areas and the high slope. So I want to shut off these charts. I really just want to look at number of tracks, which tends to relate to time. And I want to take a look at this 8% slope. So the angle in which you have the lowest amount of high slope is there at 20 degrees, but you can see it's not quite the least number of turns. But if I'm really concerned, I want to reduce that soil erosion, and I'm still planting or operating on straight parallel tracks. I want to, the outcome that I want is to reduce the amount of soil erosion, but not take so much of a hit on the time that it takes to operate on this field. So there's somewhat of a balance. So in this case, we don't quite know what's optimal for that grower, but we're providing them a tool to help figure that out. And especially as a dealer, to help work with the grower with a visual in front of them. As we go further, because I get to talk about the future, we're going to start pulling in contours as well, and creating parallel curved paths as well. So in this case, we're allowing our users to analyze elevation based on straight paths, because they are the simplest. People really want to do straight parallel paths if they can, and they typically only go to curved when they really have to. But we will be bringing in curved paths in the near future. So finally, let's say we've done all of our planning, and now it's kind of time to take action. Oops. I want to go back to, we have our saved plans. So everything's been saved and operated on. We decided what we want to do for the year, or for the year for that particular operation. This is our saved plans page, and this is not much different than any commercial site that you might order from. All the things show up, and we allow you to filter to the items that you want to take action on. So I could filter by the fields that I want to export or share, and then I can select a particular operation. So in this case, I want to filter by all of my fields. So I don't want to do anything special there, but I just want the seeding plans. So here are all the seeding plans that I created, and I want to send these to my machine. So if this were an account that was connected to John Deere, we could send AB guidance lines directly to Operations Center. This is not one of those kind of accounts, but we do have 4 file type options. The case CN1, ISO XML, John Deere setup file, and then a Trimble export. And then we support various monitors within there. So for example, within Trimble, the older egg GPS and the newer egg data. For this example, I'm going to select ISO XML because many of the displays out there do support ISO XML as an import. Kind of traditionally, our users had exported IAB guidance lines, but what Chad talked about with that full plan is where it's going to get interesting. So we can export the boundary for location, We can export all the inner tracks. So this is every single inner track. So this means that we don't require the user to enter in equipment width or a track spacing. And we bring that power to the actual grower instead of relying on every individual operator or display setup to get that the way the grower wants it. So we've now dictated that exactly what it should be. So we could export all of these right to a machine. It's the full path plan. They can follow machine steerable guidance, headland passes, as well as machine steerable passes up and down. One last piece to take action on. There was a question about reports. We are focused on digital sharing instead of PDF creation. So in the same way, I've exported these. I want to potentially communicate with my grower on some suggestions, or as a grower, I might want to communicate with my operators. I can actually share these plans. So I have a link. So I could actually copy those and I could send those via email or, sorry, I'm going to share my screen, email or text. So I want to kind of show this on my phone real quick. So this is what the user would get. This is an online version. So here's all of my path plans as a quick visual. I can tap into each one of these path plans. I can view some summary information about it, some task instructions. And if I really want to get detailed in, I can tap in and I can really understand what's going on there. And as we add more and more information, it's very dynamic and we can modify this very, very quickly. Kind of the last thing to say about this sharing is that it does not require an account. So the grower can send it to their operator. They don't have to, it's just tap on the link. I don't have to have an account. I don't have to have anything else. Made very, very easy to work with anybody with a smartphone. So Chad, back to you.
Right in the nick of time here. Excellent. Thanks a lot, Nick. I'm gonna wrap up a couple last slides here, and then we'll turn everyone loose and take on our final questions here as well. But you know, when we're talking about Equipment Explorer, I want to give you a little bit of overview in terms of how this works in terms of solution pricing and licensing models. So it will be for equipment dealers licensed at a per dealership location, so a physical location. Per location, MSRP $1,800. Number of users, so that is for a physical site. You can have up to 10 people or 10 users at that location. There will be discounting when we look at bulk purchasing and or we look at term, whether that be a 1, 2, or 3 year term on a licensing model. Equipment enhancer, so the foundation of our business, again, it's a product for equipment dealerships. It will be licensed a little bit uniquely. In Canada, full disclosure, our current operation is, for pricing model, is we license on a per acre base. And our MSRP per acre is 75 cents for 1 year or 50 cents for 3 years, okay? We're looking at something completely new and very opportunistic for our equipment enhancer and equipment explorer customer base to offer this as a service and a product to their customer base as well. So please contact us should you want further information on pricing and how this can fit your business and operation for 2022 and moving forward. So to wrap up, thank you very much for all of your time and attention today. It's very much appreciated. We are looking for channel partners. We're looking for people, organizations that can join us in our path, join us in our movement, help create demand, and possess those 3 L's I talked about earlier. If I can leave you with one thing here today, it's save 2 minutes in your agenda, whether that be today or tomorrow. Go to vergeag.com/app and sign up for an account, okay? Get yourself a free demonstration account to Verge, to Launchpad, and experience our product on your own time. And should you have any questions, and we hope you do, and I hope some of those are more along the lines of how can we work together. My information is the bottom of the screen here. Please contact me. I'm happy to hear from you, and happy to schedule a time with you one-on-one to dive a little bit deeper in how this can look for your business moving forward. So I think I'm wrapped up for today. Michaela, if you wanted to turn it over to any questions that people have before we adjourn.
Sure. Anyone who has questions, you can either submit them using the chat box or the Q&A box. You can also raise your hand, and then I can unmute you and allow you to ask Chad or Nick your question directly. So we'll give anyone a chance to submit that. I know someone had asked about sharing the recording following the webinar, and we will be doing that. You'll get an email with a link to view the recording that you can reference later or share with your team. So we'll just give anyone who has questions, one more opportunity to submit those. And while we're waiting, I just wanted to thank everyone for joining us and being with us. And thank you to Nick and Chad and Verge Ag for today's digital demo. It doesn't look like we have any questions. So like I said, the presentation audio will be made available on the Precision Farming Dealer website and via email if you'd like to review what was talked about today or share it with your team. We'll also have a link in the Precision Farming Dealer daily email newsletter with more information. If you're not signed up for that, you can do so on our website. And if you have any topics that you'd like to see us cover in future webinars, please feel free to send me an email. Thanks again to everyone for joining us, and have a wonderful rest of your day.